So, Ginger,
Yeah?
you know how we wanted to start a podcast, but we were having trouble coming up with a topic?
Yeah?
Okay, so here's my pitch. The topic of the podcast is us trying to come up with the topic for the podcast.
What, like we pitch each other podcast ideas and that's the podcast?
Yeah, exactly. We could call it, What Should Our Podcast Be About?
Miles, that's really stupid. Let's do it.
What should this song be about? I'm trying to figure it out. What should this song be about? Could you perhaps help me out? I've had a moment of doubt. What should this song be about? Welcome to What Should Our Podcast Be About? The podcast where we try to figure out what this podcast that you're listening to right now should be about. I'm Miles Grover.
And I'm Ginger Barham.
I don't think I have any updates from last time, so... Or at least if I did, I didn't write them down. So why don't we just get right into podcast ideas? Do you have podcast ideas?
I only have one idea, so you should go first. So it seems like I'm contributing more than I am.
Okay. So I don't know if this is fully an idea, but last week we were talking about ideas for our costumes. We were talking about the Wizard of Oz.
Uh-huh.
And I think we must have been talking about that with Svetlana because she came with us on our trip. And at some point she referred to the Scarecrow as the Straw Wizard, I think.
What did she call the Tin Man? The metal guy?
Maybe? I can't remember.
Big metal guy?
Yeah, something like that. I guess he's the Straw Wizard because he's got a kind of a wizard hat looking hat.
Yeah.
And he's made of straw, obviously. So I guess the idea is we talk about movies, but we describe them very badly.
Okay.
So we could describe the Wizard of Oz as a homeless girl, a straw wizard, a big cat from New York, and a metal robot with an axe or something like that.
Okay.
And
then you got to try and guess the movie?
I guess so, or maybe we're just describing the movies as if we didn't really get what was going on or something like that.
Yeah, it feels more like a segment than a whole podcast to me, maybe.
Maybe.
Could be a fun segment.
Maybe. Well, can we think of any other movies that would be fun to do that with?
An orphan meets a metal trash can that's carried a message across space for him.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about.
Star Wars, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
The Star Wars.
The Star Wars.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm very good at this game.
Yeah. Maybe it doesn't have too much to it, but I don't know.
Do you have one?
I don't. Let's see. I don't know. There's a nerd and he feeds his plant blood.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty easy, I guess.
A little shop of horrors.
Yeah. There's a nerd and his plant eats his dentist.
Also pretty easy.
I mean, it's obviously the same thing, but yeah, I don't know. Just trying to, maybe they're not supposed to be hard. I don't know.
Yeah. That's what she said?
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe there isn't that much to this idea, or maybe we'd have to. Maybe we need another aspect to it for it to work. I'm not sure, but I just thought the Straw Wizard was a very interesting.
I think you just wanted an excuse to talk about the Straw Wizard, which is fine.
Yeah,
I'm on board.
The Straw Wizard really caught me off guard, I guess.
So the idea that I had this week was kind of, I feel like I've had this idea or a similar one before, and it's not super exciting.
Okay.
But it is an easy one, which is either a book review or a book club podcast. So there's a couple ideas. We could pick a book and do like a chapter each week and like do it book club style.
Sure.
Or we just have a podcast where we just talk about the books that we're reading this week.
Okay. We definitely have talked about similar ideas before, and I feel like that it's not a terribly fun or funny idea. I mean, it might be something that people would listen to, I guess, but I don't know if it would make our podcast especially interesting.
Basically, I'd just like to talk about books.
Yeah, for sure. But if it was like bad books or specific kind of books.
Well, it will sometimes be bad books.
Sure.
I am reading one right now that is not very good.
Okay.
What are you reading right now?
I just finished Infinite Jest.
Uh-huh.
And I'm currently reading, and I also just finished Stormfront, I think it's called, the first Harry Dresden book by Jim Butcher, which was fine. It was pretty short. And now I'm reading Thud by Terry Pratchett, one of the ones about the City Watch. I have things I could talk about all those things.
I think it's interesting because you and I you tend to veer more towards fantasy and I tend to veer more towards horror. So yeah, tell me about the one you're reading right now.
The one I'm reading right now is about Sam Vimes of the City Watch. It's a later one. So he's a duke at this point. He's got a kid. The main conflict seems to be that there's like it's the anniversary of some war between the trolls and the dwarves. And there's a dwarf has been murdered. And the dwarfs are setting it up as if the trolls did it. But then it seems like maybe a troll actually did do it, but not whoever, like separately from the fact that the dwarf set up that a troll did it. So it's, kind of a standard whodunit kind of City Watch one. They're usually pretty good. I just haven't read this one before, but I've read a lot of them. Yeah,
I feel like with Terry Pratchett, like it's mostly just going to be, it's another really good Terry Pratchett book.
Yeah, it's another good, solid thing in the Discworld. The Jim Butcher book was about the main conceit of the series, I believe, is that the main character is like a private detective, but he's a wizard. And he's like one of the only openly practicing wizards in the U.S. or whatever, but everybody kind of knows that magic is like a thing. And there's been a wizard or a sorcerer or whatever that's been killing people using magic, which is a big no-no for wizards, and he's helping solve the case kind of thing. And it's called Stormfront because it turns out the wizard is using the storm as a source of power, and storms keep happening or something like that. It was fine. It was, like I said, it was pretty short. It was, Harry Dresden is the main character, and he's like, I'm old-fashioned. I think men should open doors for women and stuff like that, which is like, fine, whatever. It's a little boring, honestly, but it's fine. Also, it was read by James Marsters.
Oh, right. You did tell me that.
Who was Spike on Buffy.
You did tell me
and
that.
I barely could tell it was him.
Yeah.
Like his voice is pretty different, but
I'm sure he didn't have a British accent.
Right. He didn't have his British Spike accent. And
because he's not British.
Right. He sounded like him, but I don't know, not like Spike, I guess, which is what I would expect from him. So, but yeah, it was fine. It was fine. I might read more in that series if I run out of other stuff to listen to. I pretty much listen to everything as audiobooks rather than actually reading it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that
these
still
days.
Counts.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you? What are you?
I am reading a book. I'm almost done with it, called The Return by Rachel Harrison, which is about a group of friends, and one of them disappears for like 2 years. They have a funeral for her and everything. And then she comes back with no memory of where she's been for the last 2 years.
Okay.
And one of the friends plans this trip for them at this hotel, and they all go on this trip together, and the girl starts acting very strangely. It sounds like an intriguing concept, right?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. The problem that I have with this book is that I've got about an hour left in the book now.
Okay.
As I can tell, because Kindle tells me how long I have left. So I'm about 80% through it, probably. Mm-hmm. And it's just gotten like interesting and intriguing because so much of the book is just descriptions of things that I don't need. Like they'll be out to like every time they go out to eat, mm-hmm. like Julie, the girl who disappeared and came back, is acting weird and nobody's acknowledging it.
Okay.
But then they'll go to dinner and she'll be acting kind of normal again. And so everybody it goes back and forth like this, but there's a lot of like describing what they're ordering.
Right.
A lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue about what they're going to order. A lot of dialogue about what activities they're going to do the next day at the hotel. And none of it is really important. It doesn't end up being important to the story.
Right.
Except that like one of them gets sick and then they don't go to one of the things.
Right.
Or actually, maybe one part of it ended up being slightly important. But you didn't need a whole conversation about, we're going to go to this crepe making workshop tomorrow.
Right.
Should we do that? Or should we go to this thing? No, let's do the crepe making one because... And and I'm just like, can we get to why Julie's teeth are falling out? Like, can we get to like why Julie is like suddenly eating so much meat?
Okay.
And like why Julie smells bad? Can we get back to that? Because that's the part I'm interested in.
So it seems like there's a lot of filler, basically.
A lot of filler.
Yeah.
And now it's finally gotten to the point where things have come to a head and it's like there's action happening. Nobody knows where Julie is. The hotel is being shut down. And all the guests are being sent home and they're saying it's a staffing issue. Also very weird tonally because like there's a scene early on in the book where they're all hanging out in one of the girls' hotel rooms. And after so Julie goes into the bathroom and is in there for a really long time. And then everybody leaves the room except for the person whose room it is, Elise. And she goes in the bathroom and there's blood all over the bathroom. And she's like, it's clearly Julie's blood. And then she just brushes it off and goes to bed. She doesn't like go check on Julie or tell anybody like, guys, Julie left blood all over my bathroom.
Right.
Like, it's very weird. Like, she keeps seeing all of this horrific stuff and then not mentioning it to
just
anybody.
ignoring signs, very obvious signs.
Yeah. Like, she called Julie's husband to be like, she's acting weird. And have you seen anything weird? And he tells her that Julie's been sleeping in a separate room. And one night he woke up and went to the fridge and she was eating raw meat. And she doesn't tell anybody that he told her that.
Right.
Well,
That's very weird, right?
Now, it's been like 2 days and she's finally told them.
Right. That is a thing in some books or horror things or whatever, where it's like, sure, we all live in a world where magic and monsters aren't real. So you would have to kind of brush off weird stuff as like, I don't know, it's just weird, I guess. But like, people can't just eat raw meat and be okay, right? Like,
or if someone
that's
leaves
something
blood
major.
all over your bathroom.
Yeah, and people don't just leave blood all over the place. If you did bleed all over someone's bathroom for some legitimate reason, you would do something you would clean it up or something, right? You would try at least.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there are, beyond just the weird things happening, people would act different if there wasn't something really weird going on, right?
Or like, she's like, at points they notice that her skin is like all blue.
That is weird.
And
yeah.
like her teeth are falling out.
Right. That is also very
And they're
serious.
like, oh, she hasn't been to the dentist in like 2 years.
she must have scurvy. Right? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess there's going to be some recovery time if you've been through something traumatic for 2 years, but nobody knows what she's been through.
Right.
Like, I guess if you didn't brush your teeth for 2 years, maybe your teeth would fall out I don't know.
I mean, yeah.
I don't feel like they would just fall out though.
They wouldn't just randomly.
Like
I don't know.
it would take a while. Anyway, yeah. So it's a very weird book, and I was obviously intrigued enough to keep reading it, but it's really annoying when a book like just gets going at the end.
Right. Like, it feels like they had a short story that they thought would be sell better as a novel, right? Or something like that.
Yeah. And also, so she just told them about the raw meat thing, but before that, she had like heard a noise in the kitchen. She was looking for some crackers from her friend who was sick or something.
Okay.
And she went into the kitchen to try and find crackers. And she sees like a pig's head on the ground and like blood everywhere. And she hears noises coming from the kitchen. And then she gets freaked out and runs out. But she hasn't told anybody about that either. What kind of relationship do you have with people where you can talk endlessly about whether we're going to go to this restaurant or that restaurant, but you're not going to bring it up when you saw blood and a pig's head on the floor and ran away scared? So here's the thing is like, I think that's the message the author's trying to get across. And I know that because it's pretty heavy handed when she tells them about the meat thing. Mm-hmm. She says, oh, this is the problem with us. We never want to like talk about things that are wrong. But I feel like that's a different kind of not talking about things.
Right. Like, not talking about things that are wrong is like issues that bubble under the surface, right? That you can't acknowledge or something. It's not like there's a horror movie happening to me right now, right? Like, someone's stabbing me, but I'm not going to mention it because I don't talk about things that are wrong, right? Like,
this is not something where you can use horror as a metaphor. Right? Like,
right.
I feel like horror is often used as a metaphor for trauma, but it doesn't work in this instance.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So,
like, you use it as a metaphor, but it has to also be real in the story or it doesn't work, right? And people wouldn't act like that if it was,
Yeah, but I mean, I'm interested enough because like everybody that's like Tristan talked about being really sick, her husband, and now May is really sick. And so it's like, oh, what's Julie doing to make these people really sick? And they've talked about bad smells in the hotel, and staff disappearing. Oh, another thing she didn't mention is she found like a pair of glasses that were like the receptionist's vintage cat eye glasses in Julie's room. Didn't mention that to anybody. Like the receptionist has disappeared, and I saw her glasses in Julie's room.
No, that's very weird.
But I'm intrigued enough to know, like, I want to know what's happening, right? Like,
sure.
That's the thing with a mystery is like, even if it's badly written, you're like, I want to know where this is going. But anyway, so that's the book that I'm reading right now.
Yeah. I feel like mystery is an interesting genre because, like, certainly there are lots of good mysteries, but also it's sort of a trick, like a trick you can pull and just have a book be automatically interesting, kind of, or a movie or a show. And like, you don't even have to succeed at the end, right? Because by the time you get to the end, you've already got them, right? Like, like, I don't think Lost is as bad as a lot of people think it is, but there certainly were things that didn't totally make sense by the end or got dropped or whatever. But like, you have a show like that, you have it set up a bunch of mysteries, and then by the end, even if you drop them all and nothing happens, you already watched the whole show.
Right.
Right. And so like, you can, as a writer, I guess you can be incentivized to just put in a bunch of mysteries, and even if you don't really pull it off, you still already did it. And maybe you won't read another book by this person or whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But you'll keep reading mysteries, and a lot of them might be like this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think you still are incentivized as an author to do a good job with your book if you want people to read more of your books.
Yeah, I mean, it probably depends on different stuff, right? Because like for a show like Lost or something, which again, I don't think Lost is that bad or anything. But
I like Lost.
But just as an example, like a show where you have a mystery and then it doesn't really pan out, you still got ratings for the whole show. People are still going to give you more shows to do.
I mean, people are still interested in J.J. Abrams stuff.
Right. Or Damon Lindelof or the other people involved with Lost. And which is, again, not those people aren't necessarily bad at making shows or whatever, but like you will have succeeded to some extent. You'll get another chance probably.
Right.
Right. And people who read your book and didn't like it maybe won't, but people who read your book and thought it was okay and are looking for another book might still read your next book. Right. Like,
yeah.
I think it still probably overall benefits you if you're if you're not that good at writing a book, I guess. It's still a good way to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, I feel like it's not super easy to write a mystery. Is it?
I don't know.
I mean, I've never written one.
I've never tried, right? But if you think about it, it shouldn't be that hard because you already know what's at the end. So you
just got to start with the thing and work backwards.
Yeah, you just kind of work backwards, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, I've never tried. So maybe it's harder than it seems, but it doesn't seem like it necessarily is that hard, especially if you don't actually have to succeed that well for it to work, right?
A podcast where we write a mystery novel.
Yeah. That could be something.
Yeah.
Or you don't even have to work backwards necessarily if you just can think of some weird stuff to be mysterious, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's more what happens is you don't work backwards. You just like, and then all of her teeth fell out. Ooh, what's that about?
I feel like if you don't work backwards, though, you risk the rest of I feel like with a mystery, you got to have a plan going in or you risk parts of the story not making sense.
Well, right. But if they don't make sense and then that's mysterious, right? That's part of the mystery is that they don't make sense. And then in the end, they're supposed to all finally make sense. But if they don't, like I said, you still got the person to the end of the book or whatever.
Yeah,
so,
well,
I don't know.
I guess if you want to write a good mystery.
If you want to write a good mystery, you definitely need to like have a reason for all the mysterious things to be the way they are. But
because I get so mad when the explanation makes no sense with the rest of the book.
Right. But it seems like in this book, the mystery also doesn't make that much. Like the people just aren't reacting to the mystery in a way that makes sense either.
They're not reacting to the horror in a way that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like if your friend's teeth start falling out and like nobody wants to talk to Julie about like what's wrong with her.
Right.
And it's like,
but you don't have to talk to Julie about it to tell everybody else about it, right? Like,
well, you don't,
maybe you don't want to confront Julie, but you still would be like, what is going on,
but
guys?
I feel like you would confront Julie. You'd be like, Julie, babe, you need to see a doctor.
Right,
Your teeth are falling out.
Right, but you might not confront her about finding the missing person's glasses in her bedroom or whatever.
Right.
But you would still like mention it to someone for your own safety, if nothing else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I could talk a lot about Infinite Jest if we want to.
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant novel. Came out in the 90s. There's some dated stuff about it at this point. There's some stuff that's dated but also was kind of prescient. Like there's a whole thing about how we got video phones and then people started like putting up basically like cutouts of themselves in front of the camera so that they didn't have to like put on their makeup and stuff before getting on the phone. And like that is not totally how it worked out, but it is true that like people do sort of stuff like that for
Like
Zoom
filters
calls.
and stuff.
Filters and like you're not wearing your pants or you just put on like just enough clothes to look like you're presentable or whatever. Like
Yeah.
all the stuff that happened during
Or
COVID.
you put on a blurred background so nobody can see the piles of laundry behind you.
Right. Like the technology's a little bit better than what he imagined it could be. And also we definitely don't do video calls all the time instead of just regular telephone calls. I mean, we don't really do a lot of telephone calls in general, but we also didn't totally replace. We only do them for certain situations, right? Which makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, FaceTime is for like your relatives that are far away, right?
Yeah, and you only do it once in a while, right?
Yeah.
It's not like every phone call or whatever.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, like in a work situation, is it camera? It's like a lot of times it's cameras on versus cameras off.
Yeah, and I almost always have my camera off unless somebody says I have to put it on, and it's fine for the most
Yeah,
part.
but that's because you work in software engineering, which is a very different. That's like the norm. I hear in other settings it's not. Really.
Yeah, I mean, some companies certainly like care, like try to police you more or whatever, make you have your camera on.
Yeah.
Whatever. That is kind of a small tangent, though. Like the book is very good, but I was talking to you about this. Like there are certain reasons I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to you. One being that like
It's long.
it's very long. I don't think that's that big of a deal, though. Like you read long books sometimes.
I do, but it's exceptionally long.
It's 1,000 pages. It's not like there's plenty of books that are that long.
Yeah.
Prior to like, I think earlier this year, or maybe last year, the version that you could get on audiobook didn't include the endnotes. And the way the book is, if you don't know much about this book, about a third of the book is endnotes. And the endnotes are not just, I mean, some of them are just little notes, but a lot of them are very integral to the plot. And the book takes place partly at a tennis academy and partly at a halfway house for drug addicts. And there's also a whole plot around these wheelchair assassins from Quebec or terrorists. Anyway, that the back and forth is, I guess, some people think it's maybe meant to sort of imitate like the idea of watching tennis, where you're watching back and forth as the ball goes back and forth. So you're kind of switching back and forth from the main text to the endnote text. Anyway, the endnotes weren't part of the audiobook, so you were supposed to like look them up yourself while you were listening to it, which is I don't know who listens to audiobooks like that, but that doesn't make any sense for how.
No one's gonna do that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm in my car, I'm listening to the audiobook. I'm not going to pull over and look up the endnote. Like, why did I bother with the audiobook? But now it has the endnotes in it. And so I could, if you're interested, I would say the audiobook is pretty good. But, it has a number of like lower, like drug addicts and low class white people who use the N-word and other slurs, which, I think in the 90s it made a certain amount of sense as an author to maybe not be shying away from this sort of hard reality of people using slurs and stuff like that. Like I can see a logic behind it, but I think in 2024 we get it. You don't really need it at this point. I feel like like the culture's kind of moved on from that.
It was a shorthand for being edgy a little bit too.
A little bit, or just like real. And like, sure. But I also think that even
maybe it's not a white dude's place to do that.
Well, yeah, that. And just like, I just don't even know if it's that as real anymore. Like, I don't know if people are slinging slurs that easily in 2024 as they might have been in 1994 or whatever it was. But regardless, so that's a bit off-putting. I can get past it, but it's off-putting. I definitely would understand people who were turned off by that. There's there's a whole section where there's a character who like sort of gradually starts killing animals, cats and dogs and stuff like that. And that's pretty disturbing. I had a little bit of a tough time getting through that section. And like it's important to the plot later on and it makes sense why it's happening and stuff like that, but it is tough for me to recommend that specifically to Ginger, because I know Ginger would have a rough time with that part.
Yeah. I can watch horror movies with people being slaughtered left and right, but as soon as like a dog or a cat dies,
right, it's rough.
It's over for me.
Yeah. The other thing that's that I think people find difficult about the book is that the overall plot is very fragmented and difficult to follow to some extent, which I think is not as bad as it sounds, because the book is entertaining to read as you're reading it, even if you don't totally understand what's going on. Having read it twice now, I still don't really know a lot of stuff about what happened in it, but like and there are parts where I'm like, oh, I think that's what's going on because I knew about certain things from the first time I read it or whatever. But it's not very clear. And it like ends, it ends kind of abruptly in the middle of things. It starts kind of in the middle of things. It's also written in a non-linear way. And not only is it non-linear, but the years that different things take place in. The book takes place in a sort of future time when time has become subsidized, meaning different corporations bid to get to have their name be the name of the year. So it's like this year is the year of the dependent adult undergarment. This year is the year of the Whopper. This year is the year of the Yushitsu, long name for some device that made by this Yushitsu corporation, whatever. And so it's not obvious what order they're in, right? There is a part of the book where they mention what the order is, but if you're not keeping track of that, it's easy to not know what order things are happening in. Anyway, so it's a very complex book. I think the language is erudite, but usually not difficult to follow for the most part. And there are parts written in other kinds of styles of like, some of these lower class characters. There is also a section of African American vernacular English that feels very off and inauthentic to me, and I feel like that section really could have just been cut from the thing and not really changed anything. So there's definitely some dated aspects to it, and this was written by a white guy in the 90s aspects to it. There's a part where he suggests that black people, when they get tattoos, can only get like white ink.
Yeah, you told me about that.
Yeah,
that's weird.
Which is not at all true. Plenty of black people have black tattoos or other things.
And I do think, and I think I told you this before, but I have an aversion to this book.
It has a reputation
for being pretentious.
Yeah.
And for pretentious people reading it, and like, I don't know. I think I automatically shy away, like when I feel like people read something to like have it as like a badge of honor that this is a book I really like. Like, I feel like people do that with Infinite Jest a little bit, because it feels like, oh yeah, you got to be smart to enjoy this book. Then I'm like, I kind of automatically like shy away from it. And I've read, David Foster Wallace that I've enjoyed. Mm-hmm. I've read Consider the Lobster, and I didn't enjoy all of the essays in it, but anyway, so I think I've shied away from it a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like that's a little bit like not listening to a band you like because the other fans are like lame and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like,
I did start it once.
Yeah.
I couldn't get into it, and I know that this is like something that people have argued with me about, but I will give a book like 50 pages, and if I'm not enjoying it, I'll stop reading it and read something else. But maybe someday I'll read it. Maybe if we do a book club.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's a very good book, but there are certainly reasons not to recommend it. But all that said, I feel like I talked for a long time there, but I think if we were going to do a book club type podcast, I think it would be more fun to find ridiculous, terrible books. Like if we had done one when we read 50 Shades of Grey, that would have been pretty fun. I also am interested in reading Colleen Hoover books. Are you familiar with Colleen Hoover at all?
I don't think so.
All I know is that she's like a pretty famous, pretty well-read author with, kind of popular novels or whatever. But there's this one passage from one of her books that makes me want to read them for the terribleness of them, I guess, in the same way that I like bad movies. So here's a passage from one of her books. "Thank you for this baby," she says from the back seat. "He's beautiful." I laugh. "You're responsible for the beautiful part, Rachel. The only thing he got from me was his balls." She laughs. She laughs hard. "Oh my God, I know," she says. "They're so big." We both laugh at our son's big balls.
This can't be real.
That's real. That's apparently real.
What book is this from?
I don't have the title here.
Wait, I'm on Goodreads right now. Let me look up Colleen Hoover. Because one thing we could do that I think would be fun would be to look up. Oh, she wrote It Ends With Us. That's a movie now with Blake Lively. that I've heard not good things about.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it like actually I've heard about Colleen Hoover.
Ugly
and
Love.
I've heard that
Ugly Love might be the title.
I've heard that she writes very badly about domestic violence in a way that almost kind of glamorizes it.
Yeah. The book is Ugly Love. That has the big balls thing.
Yeah, no, there's the It Ends With Us movie is out right now, which I've heard that the movie is much better than the book, but I've heard that the book really glamorizes domestic violence and that's kind of a pattern with her. But what I was going to say is one thing we could do is just look on Goodreads and look for like the lowest rated books.
In general, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
But wow, her books have some pretty high ratings, actually.
No, she's quite popular. But I mean, so is 50 Shades of Grey.
Right. So Ugly Love is what you said that one is from?
Yeah, apparently.
What were the names that you just read me?
The names of what? There were no names said in the
there were no
passage,
names.
really.
Okay. Because apparently...
Oh, Rachel, I guess, is one name.
Because Ugly Love is apparently about Tate Collins and Miles Archer.
Yeah, apparently. But in the passage it says Rachel, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we could read some Colleen Hoover. It's not too hard to find really bad romance novels, too.
Right, sure.
What are we thinking? Do you have some more ideas?
I mean, we've hardly had any ideas so far. We basically just talked about books for most of the time.
I mean, should we just continue talking about books? Should this just be a book episode?
I mean, I guess it could just be a book episode. I don't know what we have to talk about. I mean, we could talk more about 50 Shades of Grey also, which I think we maybe have talked a little bit about before, but...
What other books have you read recently? We could talk about Fourth Wing. Did you ever finish it?
No, I didn't finish it. I think I had like an hour left or something, and I was just like, ugh, this book's stupid.
I read all of them and obviously enjoyed them.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the third one. A good book I read recently was called Incidents Around the House by Josh Mallerman.
Okay.
It's written from the perspective of a child, and it had an ending that I thought I didn't enjoy really at first, but was one of those books that after I sat with it for a couple of days, I just kept thinking about, and it kind of haunted me a little bit.
Okay.
And so it's the guy that wrote Bird Box.
Okay. I didn't read that, but I saw the movie.
Yeah. It's this 8-year-old girl who starts talking about her other mommy, and it's this entity that she keeps seeing around the house that keeps asking her, "Can I go inside your heart?"
Okay.
And it's a very slow burn kind of creepy book. Yeah, I don't know if I could say too much more about it without like giving away some of the plot, but kind of along the lines of Babadook.
Okay.
In terms of like trauma and horror. Very creepy, very good. A quick read. I recommend it.
Yeah. Do we have enough to keep talking about stuff for this episode? Like, we sort of have been landed on books, but I feel like...
You don't have more books that you've read recently?
Well, I do, but I just don't know if there's that much interest, like, if it's good audio to talk about, you know? Like...
Yeah.
If we had more, like, fun, terrible quotes from popular books, like, we could talk about, we could pull up, my inner goddess does a gentle victorious samba type stuff from...
How about, what did you hate most about Fourth Wing, since you really didn't enjoy it?
That's the thing, though. It's not that I really didn't enjoy it. It's just, like... It's a very formulaic and like it's just stupid in the way that lots of books are stupid, but like I made it most of the way through. It's just I got to a certain point where it was like the tropes and stuff kind of piled up to a point where I was like, oh, whatever, I don't care about this. Right? Like I think what made me stop was like the main character who's in love with the bad guy, or she thinks, but maybe he's not a bad guy, but maybe he is a bad guy, but maybe he's not a bad guy. And then he does something where it's like, it seems like what he did, it seems like something really bad has happened. But he's like, let me explain. It's not as bad as it seems. And she completely refuses to listen.
Yeah.
Won't let him explain it all. And just goes off and does something crazy, I think. I forget. But like that kind of thing where it's like such a contrived, like you've been like sleeping with this guy and in love with him for a while. You're like bonded to your dragons and your souls, and if either of you dies, the other one dies and stuff, right? You could give him like 5 minutes to explain what's happening.
Yeah, there's definitely some very contrived conflicts in it.
Right.
Sure.
It's like, I don't have 5 fucking minutes to listen to why you're doing this kind of thing. Right?
I remember being annoyed by that too.
And I was just like, this is going to cause so much drama for literally no reason. You could just listen to what he has to say for even 30 seconds. She just completely refuses to listen to what he's got to say, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure whatever it is will turn out there was some reason for it or whatever, right? But I just don't care because it's going to just be drama. And
so you didn't even get to see like what was actually going on.
no, like the book is like, I mean, the book was almost over, I think.
I know, but it gets very good there.
Does it?
Well, no, I mean, like you find out that everything gets flipped on its head. Everything you think is true is not true.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of seemed like that was probably, or I don't know. Maybe it'll be interesting. Maybe it would be interesting, but I just didn't care because like this main character is so dumb and the whole thing is so dumb, and there's so many dumb things about it to begin with. Where it's like, really, you have this functioning society or this functioning military academy where people can literally just murder each other and it's fine, and like be like, hey, don't murder each other, but they do, and like most of the people die, and you can somehow make a school work like that. That doesn't, none of it makes any real sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's all kind of drama tropes to begin with, and then just piling on top of each other more and more to the point where I'm just like, I could not give a shit about what's happening in this book at this point.
Yeah.
So even if everything's turned on its head, who cares? You know?
Well,
I don't know. That was my
it
feeling.
wasn't for you. I think it's interesting though that I am the type to be like, I'm 50 pages in, I'm not enjoying this book, I'm going to put it down, and you're like, I only have 50 pages left, but I'm not going to do it. Because if I'm not close to the end, I'm like, nah, I'm going to see it through.
No, but I don't only have 50 pages left because there's another whole book after that, right? So
you don't have to read the next book.
Well, you do I mean, like very often a book ends on a cliffhanger, right? So if I'm ending here at 50 pages left or whatever, it's not really different than if it ends on a cliffhanger and I finish it, right?
Yeah.
Because now I either have to read the book or I'm
But it is because now you can't count it as your book under your book.
I don't care about that even a little bit. I don't even do that. I don't even like count them on there particularly usually.
Yeah. I definitely do my Goodreads reading challenges.
Yeah.
And if I'm that far into a book, I'm going to finish it because I can't abandon it that far in.
Yeah. So I feel like we are pretty close to the end of this episode because we're sort of running out of steam, I think, and we should have a title for the episode.
Okay.
Bad Reads.
Bad Reads.
That's a subreddit, actually.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Bad Book Club.
Bad Book Club. Well, but it's just a book club, right? From what we've talked about. But
the book bus.
The book bus? It's a bus the books are on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Book Corner. The Book Nook.
The Book Nook. Miles and Ginger's Book Nook. It could just be a really wholesome little book club.
A little book nook.
Podcast,
A little
I
book
guess.
nook.
Little Book Nook. Yeah.
Can we call it Lil Book Nook? Lil apostrophe? Lil Book Nook.
Ginger and Miles' Little Book Nook.
Lil Book Nook.
I feel like it should be, it should be longer if it's going to be like Little Book Nook. Like
Ginger and Miles' Lil Book Nook.
Wholesome Little Book Nook or something. Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
I don't have any. Do you have?
Reading books with Miles and Ginger.
Reading apostrophe.
Yep, reading apostrophe.
Lil Book Nook. I like Lil Book Nook.
All right, sure. All right, well then should we wrap up, I guess?
Yeah. So you can find all the links to our social media on our website, coolpodcast.website. You can email us your ideas to ideas@coolpodcast.website. Follow us on Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please share with everyone you know.
Everyone you've ever met.
Everyone you've ever met.
All
ever.
right.
In
Yep,
your
in your
entire
whole life.
life. That's it. That's all I got.
Drunk text a recommendation for our podcast to an ex.
Do it. You know you want to.
Welcome to What Should Our Outro Be About? The outro where we try to figure out what this outro that you're listening to right now should be about. I'm still here.
And I'm also still here.
So we need a phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have maybe an idea for something we could talk about for the outro.
Okay.
Should we just say like a random word at the same time?
No, our phrase should be, he has your balls.
We both laughed at our son's big balls.
Yep. We'll accept either.
How about just our son's big balls?
Our son's big balls. Well, then it seems like no, because now I feel like we're talking about our son's big balls.
Oh, true.
Personally, and no.
Maybe it shouldn't be that. Maybe
But he has your balls, though. You could interpret any way you want.
All right, he has your balls. Sure. So if you post he has your balls and you're the first one to post it in the comments, either on Spotify or YouTube or anywhere you can post comments that we are likely to see them, then we'll shout you out on the podcast next week. And if you want, I can send you a little drawing or something.
Did we get any comments?
I don't believe so.
Boo.
We'll just keep trying. It's fine.
All right.
At some point, somebody will listen and be like, oh, I should say all those. And then I'll have to send like a bunch of drawings to the same person, probably.
Yeah.
So as far as the outro, just an update on the saga of recording my sneezes. The saga of recording my sneezes, we have not managed to do that yet. So that's
I
not
keep
what...
not being able to open the voice recorder fast enough.
Yeah. But I was thinking about more things for our How to Kill God idea, like more impossible things we could try to do. I don't know if it's a whole podcast, but what if, how would we eat the Empire State Building?
How would we eat
eat the Empire State Building? Is the last week we killed God, and now we need to eat the Empire State Building.
Well, we need about 10,000 years, and we're just going to chip off a little bit at a time and put it into ice cream.
Grind it up, maybe. Mm-hmm. It's made of things like metal and glass and stuff. Glass, I guess we could grind up. The concrete or whatever it's made of. The metal might be more difficult.
They like chip away.
Maybe we melt it a little bit or something.
I mean, I think we need a lot of time. To do this without dying.
Well, I don't know if we could do it if we would still die if we had to do it over thousands of years, right? So
we're going to have to recruit people.
Yeah, you think we get people to help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to have to crowdsource.
Are we going to have to contend with people who don't want us to eat the Empire State Building?
Probably.
Maybe people who work there or
we
got
to be sneaky.
Yeah. Do we start at the top or the bottom? Or somewhere in the middle? Do we start inside?
We'd have to start at the top if we don't want to cause casualties.
I suppose. I was thinking
How
maybe...
are we going to get up there?
Yeah.
Without anybody knowing?
I mean, we take the elevator up and we
But not to the point.
Well, I think you can take it up pretty high if you pay more or whatever.
And then we scale?
But we have to like just be taking little pieces off, right?
Yeah. So we're going to have to do it multiple times. We're going to have to be very sneaky.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe it's like a Shawshank Redemption thing where you're like using a spoon to carve out little bits of the wall over
that's what
20 years or whatever.
That's what I was picturing too. That's why I was like, we got to crowdsource.
Yeah. How many people would we need to crowdsource though? Even with 100 people, it'd probably take a long time, right?
Millions for sure.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go on the dark web.
Once again, the dark web comes to our aid. So we get our God-killing bazooka or whatever. No, our angel traps from the dark web, and we get 1 million people who will help us eat the Empire State Building.
Yep.
Okay. How would it work once people start to notice that pieces are gone, right? Because for the first...
Yeah, they're going to amp up security.
Right, the first while, nobody would notice. We just ate like the corners off a lot of bricks or something. Right, but eventually whole bricks are going to be gone.
Are we moving back to New York City then?
I think we have to live in the Empire State Building.
Oh, okay.
We have to live on top of the Empire State Building.
Okay.
And do nothing but eat it. I don't know how we're getting ice cream up there and sandwiches or whatever else we're putting the food into. The building into to eat.
Yeah. Well, the food.
The building is now
anything
food.
Anything food if brave enough.
Right. How are we getting millions of people up there?
One at a time. Yep.
So how long does it take to get one person to the top?
Somebody's stealing chunks and bringing them down, and we mail them out to people.
Somebody's stealing whole chunks of the building. Okay. Are we eating maybe we're leaving the like metal frame intact while we eat the stuff around it. And so at a certain point, people will realize the building is falling apart and just leave the building maybe.
It's going to be condemned.
Yeah.
So our goal is to destroy the Empire State Building, I guess.
Well, you'd have to eat it.
Yeah.
Unless you got a really big mouth. You get Galactus to eat. We could get Galactus to help.
Right. The very real guy, Galactus.
The real guy Galactus. Or I guess another problem is if we're just eating little bits of it and then somebody realizes a brick or whatever is gone because we've eaten a whole brick, do they replace it? Because we'd have to fight it. We'd have to eat it fast enough that it doesn't
do repairs.
Or get repaired before we're done.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously very much in operation. They make money off of selling elevator rides to the top or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's lots of... We got to do it quickly enough that they shut it down so people aren't in danger. We don't want to put people in danger.
Maybe we need to have it shut down first.
Yeah.
So
how are we going to get it shut down?
Yeah, like maybe we make people think it's like radioactive or something.
Haunted.
I don't think they shut buildings down for being haunted, especially buildings that are making a lot of money. But if nobody wants to come to it because it's radioactive.
But it would be so fun to try and do a haunting.
So step 1 of eating the Empire State Building is to haunt the Empire State Building somehow?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what I said was reasonable, but that seems too ambitious.
I want to get a Victorian dress and be painted white.
And then just jump scare
Haunt
people.
the elevators of the Empire State Building.
How are you going to do that, though?
Ooh.
I mean, how are you going to get in there?
I'm going to buy a ticket.
So you're just in line, painted up like a ghost, waiting to get a ticket.
No, I'll buy my ticket online ahead of time.
Okay, but you still have to wait in line to get on there, probably, right?
Woo.
I feel like we get to the top, we change into our ghost outfits, and then like hide in the bathroom or something.
Yeah.
And then when everybody's gone home,
kind of paint.
yeah, when everybody's gone home for the day, we come out of the bathroom and then hide in the elevator, hang out in the elevator until people come in the morning.
Are there security guards at night?
Probably.
And we just like, woo.
We freak out the security guards.
They take a picture to prove it's haunted. You like
Everyone
black out our
believes
feet so it doesn't look like we have feet, so we're floating. Yeah. I'd be like, look, it's floating.
Okay. I am not sure how successful this would be. Wouldn't it be easier just to pretend it's radioactive or something?
Yeah, but it won't be as fun.
We could paint like glowy green stuff all over the place, like the Ninja Turtle ooze got in there, and that's why it's radioactive.
Yeah. You don't think they'd test?
Well, we could come in with Geiger counters that we rigged up to always go be like, right?
Oh, okay. So we're gonna pose as like
we're
the official guys.
Yeah, we're the official radioactive tester guys.
I see.
And we're ghosts. Or
no, and we're ghost hunters.
And we're ghost. Okay.
You have radiation and ghosts.
So I'm a ghostbuster and a radioactive detector, and you're a ghost and you're radioactive. You're a radioactive ghost.
Yeah.
And I'm
the detector.
The detector and buster.
Yes.
But
flawless.
I can't bust you, even though busting makes me feel good because you're too radioactive.
Yes. So we got to shut the place down.
We got to shut the whole place down for at least 100 years so that we have time to eat it.
That's how long it takes for radiation to go away.
Right. That's sort of true, I guess, ish. Vaguely close to true. Okay, so that's step 1. Now we just need to get in there and eat the building.
Yeah.
All right.
So now we have 100 years.
Now we have 100 years to eat the place, and I'm sure we'd figure it out.
Yeah. Cool.
So problem solved.
Problem solved.
Cool. All right. Well, that's the podcast, I guess.
All right.
Thanks for listening. We're sorry, and we won't do better next time. Bye.
What was that podcast about? I'm trying to figure it out. Didn't catch what that was about.